Seiko is perhaps the only affordable watch that can be spoken in the same sentence as Rolex and Omega with a straight face. Why is that? What makes Seiko the good budget watch company? Today, we're taking a look at the unique story of Seiko's founder, his disruptive business philosophy, and Seiko's greatest accomplishment, the Quartz watch. Let's start from the beginning. Kintaro Hattori was a 13-year-old watchmaker's apprentice. Within 5 years, he opened his first clock repair shop. That was 1877. By age 22, he incorporated his first business, Seiko History, in 1881. Hattori then started Seiko in 1892 for sha meaning house, and Seiko meaning exquisite, minute, and success. That's a pun. In his first year, Hattori made 70 clocks. Within 5 years, Seiko History became the biggest clock seller in all of Japan. From the get-go, Kintaro Hattori executed a succinct business strategy based in efficient production, making parts in-house, optimizing the assembly line, and maintaining high standards through rigorous testing. By 1895, Seiko was no longer producing 70 clocks per year. They were producing 300 clocks. Not 300 clocks per year, 300 clocks per day. Keep in mind, this was the 1890s, over 6 years before the Ford Motor Company's first plant. That same year, the innovation and imagination of Kintaro Hattori led to the first Seiko pocket watch, the Timekeeper. Seiko was a tier above every other Japanese watch manufacturer. It forced most other companies into bankruptcy. Kintaro Hattori kept innovating by incorporating new ideas from his trips abroad. When asked in 1929 how he was able to effectively overthrow the Japanese timekeeping market, Hattori remarked, "The only hope we had of driving out European and American products was to promote factory efficiency through mass production and to reduce costs while maintaining high quality." So that's exactly what he did. Seiko became the Japanese watch brand by creating low-cost, higher-quality timepieces. It sounds simple, right? Well, there's a bit more to it. During the early decades of the 20th century, Seiko sold pocket watches, alarm clocks, and wristwatches at a loss. They were able to reinvest into research and development by using profits from their highly successful wall clock product lines. By continuing to invest heavily into imported materials and manufacturing techniques, Seiko continued to grow year by year. Hattori's production strategy relied on a careful use of resources and an insightful, long-term view of the future. He was able to enact his main goal of lowering prices without sacrificing quality by funneling profits into advanced, automatic precision tooling rather than skilled workers. In plain, translated English from Kintaro Hattori, it was the purchasing of equipment and the designing of new equipment that fueled Seiko during these years. But it wasn't just the equipment that drove Seiko's meteoric rise. It was the savvy international network that Kintaro built from his travels. When the Great Kanto earthquake destroyed Seiko Hattori's factory in 1923, Kintaro Hattori rebuilt it. At the age of 64, Hattori rebuilt his company within a year. He was able to do so by utilizing well-established connections in and outside of Japan. But being the biggest clockmaker in all of Japan was just the beginning. There was one nation that defined watchmaking during the first half of the 20th century. It was not Japan. It was Switzerland. The Swiss manufacturers had a stranglehold over the watch industry as a whole due to the long history of making timepieces spanning hundreds of years in Switzerland. Meanwhile, Japan only started using Western methods of timekeeping after 1865. In the 1930s, Switzerland was the nation where time was measured, commoditized, and sold. But there's one huge difference between the traditional Swiss watch manufacturer and Seiko. Switzerland is home to a complex, pre-existing network of watchmakers. Thousands of individual companies specialize in making specific watch components, which are then exchanged between businesses to create the final product. Contrary to this model, Seiko does the exact opposite. Seiko specializes in making as many parts of the watch as it can in-house. So, over the next 20 years, Seiko continued to improve its production process. The company enhanced its ability to mass produce by investing in automatic machining equipment and fully interchangeable modular watch components to drive down the prices across many product lines. But Seiko leadership was not content with being just another clockmaker. The Hattori family continued to pursue a concrete, long-term business strategy by investing not only in production as they had before, but in reputation. During the 1950s, Seiko dedicated a significant portion of its resources to R&D. Seiko became so dominant within its home country that it decided it was time to expand its horizons by marketing internationally. The first step was to start entering international timekeeping competitions. So, over the next 20 years, Seiko competed with middling results. While outperforming every other Japanese manufacturer, Seiko's best performance as of 1963 was 10th place in the Swiss Neuchâtel competition. This was still considered a great accomplishment. They are the first non-Swiss company to get into the top 10 of the Neuchâtel, but in the wristwatch category of the 1964 Neuchâtel, Seiko did not fare so well. They earned 144th and 153rd place with their two submissions. But Seiko did not give up. The company continued to invest in competitive developments by buying large swaths of new tooling and continuing to promote new research. Those earlier performances, while weaker than desired, led to Seiko gaining new visibility and market share outside of Japan. Seiko continued to innovate and improve its production process. By 1965, Seiko's number of exported devices was the highest in the world. The company's innovations did not go unnoticed. In 1967, Seiko's observatory chronometers took second and third places in the chronometer division of the Neuchâtel competition. In 1968, Seiko entered the Geneva Observatory competition, winning 7 out of the top 10 slots and becoming the first place overall finisher. Investing in precision was a pivotal step in building a strong brand reputation. Seiko's core business strategy is to make timepieces that are both low cost and high quality. The long-term vision paid off. Within 20 years, Seiko established itself as a major world player, ubiquitous not only for novelty and affordability, but for indisputable quality. But company leadership was not satisfied with being just another global watch brand. So, the executives at Seiko launched an initiative that would change the world of watches forever: Quartz. The space race between the USA and the USSR defined the 1960s. But while Kennedy and the cosmonauts went head-to-head to see who could touch the surface of the moon first, two completely different countries competed over a completely different milestone. The objective? Who would be the first to make a watch propelled by quartz? The quartz clock was invented in 1927 by Warren Marrison of the Bell Telephone Laboratories as a more accurate alternative to the mechanical clock. Quartz watches work due to piezoelectricity. By applying pressure to certain minerals, small electric currents can be generated. The process works in reverse as well. Marrison figured out how to build a massive quartz clock by generating stable frequencies through a quartz crystal in an electrical circuit, thereby circumventing the need for a traditional mechanism to generate pressure. Marrison also demonstrated the improved accuracy of the quartz oscillator over mechanical clocks. By the 1940s, quartz clocks became the scientific standard for timekeeping. The only problem? The clocks were as large as a room. By the 1950s, Seiko was already producing large quartz clocks for industrial use. The commercial timepieces were furniture-sized. This was an upgrade over the room-sized predecessors. But by the 1960s, Seiko was producing quartz clocks that could be used in radio stations, sporting competitions, and railway stations. Coming up with a watch-sized quartz instrument would be a stretch. Getting quartz crystals down to size was not the issue. However, the oscillating mechanism and the batteries were far too large to be processed down to scale. When Seiko started developing its first quartz watch, it was impossible to fit the necessary components into the small form factor. Even though it seemed impossible, Seiko started developing its quartz watch technology in 1959. The Hattori family kept the spirit of innovation and imagination alive by continuing to invest in both production and R&D. But instead of looking to other clock manufacturers for outside help, Seiko did what it does best. It insourced production in-house. Japan and Switzerland have historically different approaches to making watches. While the established Swiss watchmakers focused on making precise improvements to individual elements of the timepiece across many separate companies, Seiko was able to concentrate on every part of the watch. A Swiss watch requires the coordinated efforts of several teams to put together each layer. A Seiko is built in one factory. By the 1960s, Seiko was able to assemble almost every stage of its watch without outside help. So, when it came to the Quartz watch, rather than innovating the design of each component and communicating between several different manufacturers, Seiko hired a team of mechanical engineers and watchmakers to make a new watch from scratch. While the Swiss method was effective for creating beautiful, luxury quality pieces that emphasized the specificity and precision of each component, Seiko's all-around approach turned into a competitive advantage for inventing the new machine. However, by the end of the decade, making a quartz clock fit into a wristwatch still seemed unlikely at best. But in 1969, Chairman Shoji Hattori gave his engineers a tall order. They needed to come up with a marketable product by the end of the year. The team at Seiko needed to figure out how to make Apollo 11 era components fit into a watch-sized package. Apart from the challenge of creating meaningful advancements in battery technology, Seiko had to refine their quartz movements from the ground up. The first quartz watch was made possible by using an integrated circuit chip. Seiko had to develop their own internal computing system by manually soldering circuit boards and testing prototypes. And against all odds, they did it. Seiko revealed the first quartz wristwatch ever made on Christmas 1969. The watch cost as much as a car. Seiko sold a limited run of 100 units for 450,000 yen each. The quartz watch changed the idea of what a watch could be. The accuracy of a wristwatch went from being seconds off per day to per year. Quartz oscillators function at a more stable and precise rate than mechanical escapements. The integrated circuits within the watch also reduce future maintenance costs due to the lack of moving parts. The invention of the quartz watch changed everything. Seiko continued to skyrocket in popularity following its disruptive demonstration of technological advancement. Within 8 years of Astron's release, Seiko became the highest-grossing watch company in the world. Seemingly overnight, wristwatches went from analog, unreliable hobby toys to modern, accessible pieces of hardware. The new era of affordable and approachable watchmaking benefited Seiko more than any other manufacturer. By continuing to rely on its mid-range pricing strategy and enhanced reputation from international competitive success, Seiko was able to dominate the new era, providing innovative, high-quality products at lower prices than other reputable brands. The reason that Seiko was able to overtake the Swiss manufacturers is because of its vertically integrated, highly automated, notoriously efficient production. During development of the Astron, Seiko was able to assemble, test, and export nearly every part of its watch. Swiss competitors could not. Seiko's ability to control its production gave it an unexpected competitive advantage over its Swiss rivals, who often faced shortages and supplier issues. While Swiss watch brands have legacy, prestige, and top-of-the-line products, Seiko has efficiency, reliability, and a proven track record. Seiko is still a prominent presence in the watch world, largely due to its insistence on automating development and innovating its timekeeping mechanisms. Seiko effectively disrupted the Swiss-dominated watch market by addressing the previously hidden demand for low-cost goods at a respectable level of quality. The small Japanese manufacturer overtook the timekeeping titans by strategically focusing on production, R&D, and brand reputation, with the end goal of being to cut costs without sacrificing quality. By persistently shifting assembly to an in-house model, Seiko is able to control for every variable, focusing on making increasingly reliable, low-cost goods. Out of these goods, the Quartz watch has become the most noteworthy original invention to come out of Seiko's long history. The Quartz watch is perhaps the single most significant contribution that Seiko made to the world of watches. I personally wear a Seiko Quartz watch. On my wrist, I have an accurate, reliable, durable, inexpensive piece of art and history. And it's a piece that I've never taken into a watch shop to be serviced. I probably never will. Kintaro Hattori was famous for his insistence on moving forward. He would often avoid talking about the past, even about his past successes. So despite what Kintaro Hattori would have wanted, and despite my better judgment, I wanted to take a bit of your time today to reflect on a historical icon, his inspiring legacy, and the offspring of his initiative that crystallized his original vision. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.